Lindell TV is pleased to present the Sentinel Report with your host, Alex Newman. Alex has written for a wide array of publications in the United States and abroad. He currently serves as a contributor to Epoch Times and foreign correspondent and senior editor for the New American magazine. Alex is the author of several books and has been a guest on countless radio and television programs and is a much sought-after conference speaker. Alex is best known for his reporting and research that has exposed the dangers and agenda of globalism. As the father of 5 children, Alex is working to defend faith, family, and freedoms from the hostile philosophies and ideas that are contrary to the Bible and the United States Constitution. And now, here is your host, Alex Newman.
Welcome to the Sentinel Report. I'm Alex Newman, your host. Thank you so much for joining us today, folks. We've got a very special guest, so we're actually going to cut our news segment short today. His name is Lieutenant Colonel Tommy Waller. He's the new head of the Center for Security Policy. He's going to talk to us about the food issue, food as national security, and also a number of other very significant national security threats facing our nation. So we'll do a quick news segment and then get to him right after the break. But we want to start, as we always do, in the Bible, in the Word of God. This comes out of Proverbs chapter 22, and it's in verse 3. A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. I've been saving that one for a while. Today is going to be a perfect day to think about that, because our guest is going to share with us some of the threats that are emerging on the horizon that could be coming soon to a community near you. Before we get to our news segment, folks, preparewithsentinel.com. That could be your one-stop shop for all the great stuff that you need to be prepared. Obviously, the food crisis is already here. We've been warning you that the food crisis was coming for years. In the UK, they're now rationing fruits and vegetables, believe it or not. Energy prices are skyrocketing. Infrastructure is burning. Folks, there is a crisis underway already. Millions of people around the world already don't have enough to eat, and it's going to get worse according to the governments, according to the United Nations, and it may be coming soon to a place near you. So, folks, take this real seriously. Go to preparewithsentinel.com. You'll get incredible deals, $200 off every 3-month emergency food preparedness kit. You also get $200 in free gear, including AM, FM, hand crank, solar powered radio. You get an emergency stove. You get 4-in-1 LED light, waterproof matches, all of it for free, just for getting yourself and your family prepared. Now, I live in hurricane country. Just in the last few years, we've been hit several times. We've lost power for weeks at a time. If you live on the other coast, the crazy coast, you might have earthquakes. You never know what could happen. Don't go to a FEMA food line. There's no reason to do that. Go to preparewithsentinel.com and get yourself ready. And again, incredible deals, folks. Incredible deals. $200 off every kit, plus $200 worth of free stuff, only at preparewithsentinel.com. All right, folks, our news for today, we're going to go through this real quick. And I always get feedback that, Alex, you talk too fast. Nobody can hear you. I'm sorry, guys. Watch it in slow motion. There's just so much that people need to know that you're not going to hear other places. So, big thing in the Washington Free Beacon. Turns out that Joe Biden's clean energy nonsense is actually not so much about clean energy, but shoveling billions of taxpayer dollars into the bank accounts of his wealthy billionaire donors. This is really interesting data that the Washington Free Beacon found, folks. Donors like Bill Gates, donors like Lauren Powell Jobs. Just in the last couple of months, the Department of Energy has announced $3 billion in loans to electric battery companies, Redwood Materials and Ioneer. Both of these companies got funding from Jobs, from Gates, and from other progressive billionaires who are helping to fund the Democrat machine. This is not about saving the planet, folks. In fact, it has nothing to do with saving the planet. It's about taking your money and your freedom. Just last weekend, I was at the Heartland Institute's 15th annual climate conference. I interviewed some of the greatest scientists out there. Dr. Richard Lindzen, right, MIT professor of meteorology. Dr. William Happer, professor of physics at Princeton University, also Trump's climate advisor. Go watch those. You'll find them at thenewamerican.com. They will tell you they're lying to you about CO2 being pollution. What they really want is your money and your freedom. Turning back to agriculture, Zoetis, a subsidiary of Pfizer, everybody's favorite company, they have injected apparently 100 million animals with this mRNA technology. We had Senator Tammy Nichols on the program last week talking about how her new bill to make it a crime to inject this into any human being or animal. Let's see what happens. But folks, you know what? I don't want my beef injected with mRNA weird stuff. I don't want my chicken injected with mRNA injections. So somebody needs to do something about this. Also, the Arizona House of Representatives, they just passed a measure. This was last week, that would further expand the ban on using any state or local government resources on enforcing federal firearms regulations and laws. I think it's a great idea. It's HB 2394, passed on a party line vote, 31-29. I doubt the left-wing pseudo-governor will sign it, but many, many Republican states can and are doing this, and many more should do it. What it does is it bans any state or local government employees, resources from any participation in enforcement by the U.S. government of gun control schemes. Over in Texas, Representative Brian Slayton has a new bill there that is making liberals' heads explode. It would give property tax relief to married couples with children. It's called the Get Married, Stay Married, and Be Fruitful and Multiply. And it defines qualifying married couple as a man and a woman. That's one of the reasons liberal heads are exploding. Pete Buttigieg would not be eligible. But yeah, fascinating times we live in. Speaking of the battle to defend natural marriage, lawmakers in Iowa have two new bills that would expunge any same-sex marriage language from their state laws and would declare the national statute passed with help from a couple dozen rhino Republicans, the Disrespect for Marriage Act, as they call it the Respect for Marriage Act. But this bill would completely abolish that, and it would declare that this national statute that Congress passed is null and void. This comes as more and more Republican Party organizations in Iowa censure Senator Joni Ernst, the Republican who joined with a handful of other Republican senators to vote in favor of this bill that, of course, has really significant restrictions on religious liberty inside. Back to farmers. This is in the European Union. Thousands of farmers loaded up their tractors and went into Brussels to protest massive attacks on the agricultural sector. What a great idea. Wage war on farmers. What could possibly go wrong? Here's a little clip from that protest.
The government.
All right, we're back, folks. Now, Amazon has announced that they're going to stop construction on their Tower of Babel headquarters 2 in Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. This comes amid thousands of layoffs and questions about what they're going to do with all that office space. Some really bizarre images, folks. Let me show you, of course, first the plan for the Amazon headquarters. You can throw that up, Reagan. And next, I want to show you a very famous, maybe the most famous painting ever of the Tower of Babel. Watch. Wow, coincidence, I'm sure. Next up, folks, General Michael Flynn, who, of course, has been a guest on this show a number of times. He is suing the feds for malicious prosecution. He wants 50 million smackers due to the Department of Justice's so-called malicious prosecution. They forced him to enter into a plea deal by threatening his son. Yeah, we'll see how that goes, but we wish you well, General Flynn. Somebody needs to be held accountable for this. Turning to CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, it is now being framed in left-wing media, right-wing media, and so-called moderate media as a fringe, far-right extravaganza that's dominated by pro-Trump people and et cetera, et cetera. So, folks, this is a deliberate agenda. You can see the headline here in Bloomberg, ultra-conservatives and the far-right event. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis did not show up, and neither did Kevin McCarthy and a whole bunch of others. So, yeah, folks, they're trying to fracture the conservative movement once again. They know divide and conquer is their best strategy. And last, but certainly not least, before we go to our guest, a staff attorney of the Soviet Poverty Law Center, better known as the Southern Poverty Law Center, has just been arrested by the Georgia Bureau of Investigations on domestic terrorism charges. Yep, let's throw up his picture, Reagan, if you've got it. Folks, the SPLC is the group that specializes in calling everybody that doesn't like them hate groups and extremist groups, right? They've called the American Family Association a hate group. They've called the Family Research Council a hate group. They've called just about everybody you could think of either a hate group or an anti-government group. And it's just very ironic that now one of their attorneys is arrested on terrorism charges. And of course, the clown car, formerly known as the FBI, like I said, regularly relies on the SPLC as an authority. They promote their propaganda to state and local law enforcement across the country. And this is after they've been made aware of how uncredible the SPLC actually is. In fact, just a few years ago, they were promoting Bill Ayers. Yes, that Bill Ayers, the terrorist, founder of the terrorist Weather Underground Group, working with communist Cuban intelligence. They bombed the State Department, the Pentagon, Capitol Hill, and a bunch of police officer funerals, including police officers they killed. SPLC said he was an education authority and an anti-Vietnam War protester. Nothing to see here. The founder, Morris Dees, was exposed in court documents having allegedly molested his stepdaughter. So, folks, these are not people that we should be turning to for intelligence for our state, local, and federal law enforcement officials. In fact, this is a dangerous, subversive group. In fact, their hate propaganda has repeatedly inspired terrorists, like the terrorist who went and tried to shoot up people at the Family Research Council. He actually admitted when he was interviewed by the FBI that he was inspired to do so by the SPLC and its hate propaganda. Stay with us, folks. We're going to be right back with Tommy Waller of the Center for Security Policy, talking about the food crisis, the food issues that we're facing as a nation, the possibility of an EMP attack, communist China, and much more.
Most churches are silent about today's intense culture wars, leaving Christians alone and ill-equipped to stand in the battleground of ideas raging against us. That's why GTI Ministries has created a special bundle of new teaching tools to keep your family, friends, and church from being taken captive by a world at war with our God. We have reformatted our popular You Are What You Think textbook series to synchronize with our Thinking Like a Christian video series, enabling anyone to easily lead others through this life-changing curriculum. Our special bundle also includes new instructor guides for assisting the leader moment by moment, and which also contain discussion questions with answer keys. Go to gtimin.com and click the green banner at the top to receive your special bundle containing all these resources for only $119 for the DVD format or $99 for the streamed or thumb drive style. Take a stand for family and faith. Go to GT.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back! The My Pillow guy!
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0. When I invented My Pillow, it had everything you'd ever want in a pillow. Well, now there's new technology that makes it even better. My Pillow 2.0 has my patented fill combined with a cooling fabric with temperature regulating thread. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a MyPillow or not, you need to get the brand new MyPillow 2.0. Call or go to mypillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit mypillow.com.
The Homegrown Generation Family Expo is back. The Homegrown Generation Family Expo is a live and fully interactive online conference coming March 6th through 9th. The conference will feature many of today's most popular speakers addressing the most important issues that homeschool families face, and every session will give you the opportunity to have your questions answered. Registration is now open at homegrowngeneration.com. Use the coupon code Newman to save $10 on registration today. It'll be 4 days of nonstop encouragement and fun that you can enjoy from the comfort of your home. Registration includes lifetime access to every session. Mark your calendars for March 6th through 9th and visit homegrowngeneration.com to register today.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. I'm your host, Alex Newman. Folks, go support our advertisers. By the way, the Homegrown Generation Family Expo, today it starts. So if you want to sign up, now would be the time to do it. And if you use that promo code Newman, you get $10 off of the price of admission. You also get permanent access to all the speeches from those amazing speakers. All right, folks, our guest today is Lieutenant Colonel Tommy Waller. He's the president and CEO of the Center for Security Policy, one of the most important organizations in the national security space in this country. He just a little bit of background on him. In addition to serving now as the new head of the Center for Security Policy, he was lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps, served more than 2 decades active duty and reserves. He was deployed to Afghanistan, Iraq, Africa, the Caribbean, many other places. He completed the Marine Corps Command and Staff College and was cross-assigned to serve as a key staff member of the U.S. Air Force's Electromagnetic Defense Task Force. We'll talk a little bit about EMPs. He joined the Center for Security Policy in 2014, served as Director of Infrastructure Security until 2021. That's when he was named Executive Vice President. Now he is basically running it. Tommy, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us. I want to start with EMPs, electromagnetic pulses. Just a couple years ago, I was very honored to speak with the man who actually chaired the Congressional EMP Task Force, Dr. Peter Vincent Pry. He told me it'd be a very simple matter to launch one of these on America, and he said that 90% of Americans would be dead within a year. Was this just fear-mongering, or is this something we should be concerned about?
Well, Alex, I appreciate you having me on and talk about it. It's a hugely important issue, and it is real. And in fact, the 90% number that the Congressional EMP Commission came up with was merely by looking at the North American landmass that existed before electricity and how many Americans it supported, right? And so the population of the country prior to electricity was about 30 million people. And so when you do the math, they figured, well, you took away electricity, we would lose the number of people the North American landmass could support. I think it would actually be a lot worse than that, Alex. You think about, before electricity, people knew how to live without electricity. And most people don't nowadays. And so it's an absolutely vital thing for us to wake up to and to do everything we need to defend that most critical infrastructure that produces, transmits, and generates electricity.
Tommy, who would have the for the folks out there who aren't familiar with EMPs, give us just a little background on what that means. Who might have the capabilities, the motive to want to do something like that? And what would it look like if they were to do that? I mean, what would actually happen? How would our lives be different?
Sure. Well, it's important to understand that an electromagnetic pulse can actually come from both nature, the sun, and of course humans. We discovered it as humans when we started to detonate nuclear weapons. And in fact, the ground burst nuclear weapons, they found that anything the fireball touched, it would produce this electromagnetic energy. So any conductor that was there in the region of that blast would be induced with just a massive current. And so they hypothesized, well, if it was launched in the exo-atmosphere out in space, so you get up to 30 kilometers or higher, scientists hypothesized that it would produce a pulse that could, in fact, hurt infrastructure on land. And that's exactly what happened when they did the high-altitude nuclear blasts in the 1960s. Both the United States and the Soviet Union found that it did catastrophic harm to electric infrastructure. In fact, a lot of the very instruments that they used were ruined in the test. They had no idea how strong it would be. And so it became a really highly classified secret for both sides. President Kennedy signed the Atmospheric Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. We stopped doing atmospheric nuclear tests because of the type of damage it could cause, not only on Earth, but to the satellites in low Earth orbit. And so it was classified really until the Congressional EMP Commission, who you spoke before, Dr. Peter Pry, he's a hero for this country. Until that commission was told by Congress to decide whether or not it should be unclassified. And it was its first unclassified report published, unfortunately, the same exact day as the 9/11 Commission report was published in 2004. So it didn't get nearly enough attention. And frankly, Alex, it hasn't gotten enough attention from then until now, and certainly not enough attention or not enough action to defend against it.
Yeah, and that strikes me as pretty clear. I mean, we're talking about something that could kill maybe conservatively 90% of our country, something that could happen naturally, something that multiple hostile foreign governments could unleash on us. One of the things that Vincent Peter Pry told me was that he and the team had come up with a number of about $5 billion as an investment that could help harden the grid, that would help us basically protect against this and get us back on our feet quickly. For perspective, he said that's about how much money we send to Pakistan every year in foreign aid, and yet for some reason Congress consistently refuses to do this. Now, they've all got their continuity of government plans. They know they and their families are all going to be taken care of if something goes wrong. But why do you suppose they won't do this? If you have any insight, I mean, what could possibly stop them from wanting to take these common sense protections?
Well, I have another billion reasons why, and that's the money and the influence that comes from the electric power industry. So when you look at regulatory capture, I think your viewers will probably be familiar with regulatory capture in, for example, the FDA. right? I mean, I just retired from the Marines last week officially. It doesn't look like I'm a Marine anymore. I'm not in standards. I got to try to grow a beard like you, Alex. But that was over something involved that I think regulatory capture was involved, and that's the unlawful way that they imposed a mandate to take an emergency use authorized, quote, vaccine, which I refuse to do, right? Well, that same type of regulatory capture exists right now with respect to the electric power industry. And let me just say, Alex, there are a lot of good people in the electric power industry. Some of my best friends work for the power companies. And, you know, there's nothing I ever did in uniform or ever would do in uniform that would actually have something to do with the day-to-day survival that would affect the day-to-day survival of the American people. Those that keep the lights on in this country are to be thanked for our very survival. But the unfortunate thing is, despite all these hardworking utility line workers, linemen, engineers, at the very top of the utility industry, there is a significant effort to wish away the EMP threat and, in fact, to misinform the debate. It is so bad that they've funded studies where they linked with the Department of Energy, the Electric Power Research Institute, EPRI, to really misinform the American public and the industry and the leaders in the government about the catastrophic results that could come from a nuclear EMP. And that's exactly what I worked on as a member of the Air Force's Electromagnetic Defense Task Force, or EDTF, was to really expose some of those myths that were put out by the industry. And it's unfortunate that so far, Alex, you mentioned the government hasn't done what it's supposed to, the industry hasn't done what it's supposed to, and every month when we spend our power bill, we contribute to the lobbying funds that go to that industry to keep themselves from being regulated in such a way that would solve this problem.
Yeah, it's just terrifying. I mean, meanwhile, we've got communist Chinese spy balloons flying overhead with God knows what kind of payload in there. I mean, it's hard to imagine that this is happening in our country. Tommy, I want to shift gears a little bit. You have a recent white paper called Food Security is National Security. Now, I've been telling the folks who watch this show regularly that we have some serious issues in our food systems. In fact, I think people are right to be concerned about the war on farmers, some of what's happening around the world, and of course it's coming here. Tell us a little bit about what you found when you started digging into this. Is our food supply vulnerable? And if so, what should we be doing to fix it?
Sure. Yeah, Alex, actually, I have to commend you. You wrote about this in the Epoch Times last July, and I think that what you wrote, it was so succinct. It pointed to the UN's Agenda 2030. I would just reference people to go back to your article and read that. But if we took your article as a launching off point, right? So we know that there are policies, both global and here domestic in the United States, where there are policies that are making food more scarce, right? They're trying to use food as a weapon, right? Just like Mao did in China. I mean, even Henry Kissinger said once that you control the food, you control the people. You control energy, you control nations, you control money, you control the world. Well, that's what's happening right now. So if we took what you wrote back last summer and we use that as a launching off point to the question that you asked, our lack of preparedness as a society is one of the most significant elements of food security that we have to worry about. The average American makes 1.6 visits to the grocery store every week, right? Less than 2% of our population produce the food for the rest of us, the 98% that consume it. Those factors right there alone are significant and worrisome. Now you put into the factor that most food items that we consume as Americans actually have to travel more than 1,500 miles from where they're produced to where they're consumed. And the infrastructure that goes into growing the food, harvesting the food, storing it, transporting it, storing it again, and distributing it, that infrastructure is just as vulnerable as the grid. And it relies on electricity, right? So the nexus between food infrastructure and electric infrastructure is probably the single most worrisome pieces of this. So we're not prepared as a country. The strategic national stockpile no longer contains any food. It used to during the Cold War. And the average American's not prepared. And so that's what's so encouraging about, what you're doing every day, Alex, is promoting preparedness. And that's exactly what we did in our report. The last few pages of this report talk about what can be done in terms of policy at the federal, state, and local level, what people can do as individuals. It's the one area where Americans can actually make a difference with respect to food security. because they can themselves become better prepared.
Yeah, and I think it's so essential that people focus on this, folks. I've talked to multiple members of Congress, even just over the last few months. They all told me, we're going to do something, we're going to do something. I've talked to multiple state attorneys general. We're investigating. And I hear a lot of talk, but unfortunately, I don't see a lot happening yet. And yeah, I know they passed the omnibus bill, and they got to wait till September till they can defund stuff. But so much is going on, and so little action, unfortunately, is happening from the federal level. Tommy, we've only got a couple minutes left, but share with you, if you would, with the folks, some ideas on how can they prepare personally, and what can they say to like their county commissioners, their state legislators, their members of Congress that might be useful for getting some action on these really, I think, almost existential threats, the EMPs, the food, the infrastructure, I mean, all these different threats that we're facing.
Well, just know that the cavalry's not coming, right? There's no, Uncle Sam is not going to rescue you. And so when you think about like the messages from FEMA, get ready with your 72-hour kit, that's unrealistic, right? You need to be ready to take care of yourself. And that grows out from where you are, right, with your local community. And so to your point, our food security report does have specific recommendations for the types of policies that can be adopted. I will tell you that we do see right now in states, there are bills that are being, filed to help, for example, curb Chinese investment in agricultural land. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, these things, in Colorado, for example, unfortunately, in that particular example, a bill that would have made a lot of progress in that state went through an entire hearing. Every Democrat member didn't say a word, didn't ask a single question, and voted against it. It died. Every Republican member tried desperately to argue for the bill. So it's unfortunate there's a political nexus with some of this, and that's not how it should be. I mean, just like electricity affects every single American, so does food security. So I would just encourage your viewers, number one, to become more prepared individually, which means getting smart on the issue, which you're helping them do, and then grow that out from there, right? So like, for example, right here in my own community, my neighborhood, right? We lessen restrictions on the types of things that an HOA would normally say, well, you can't have these types of animals in your yard, gardens and whatnot, right? So my own preparedness at the personal level. I mean, there's lots of food here at my household, right? And I'm growing my own. So that's one step. And then moving out from there into the counties. Any opportunity to take your dependence off of the globalists, off of the government is what you need to do, okay? And so, Alex, I just have to commend you because from what I can tell, you're one of the people who is sounding the alarm to the American people to do just that. So it's an honor and privilege to be able to join you on your show.
It's an honor to have you here, Tommy. Thank you so much for what you're doing. We'll look forward to getting you back very soon.
Sure thing.
All right, folks, check out the Center for Security Policy, folks. There's no other organization that I know of that is doing as much in the national security realm to help keep our country safe. These are professionals who worked in national security. These guys come out of the military, the intelligence agencies, law enforcement, and they know the threats that our country is facing, threats that, unfortunately, a lot of our politicians don't want to talk about, don't want to deal with. But, get their information, share their information, go to the website. Folks, these are really, in many cases, existential issues, existential threats to our country. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be able to spend this short time with you every day. Hope you'll join us tomorrow. Hope you'll support our advertisers. Go to mypillow.com, use that promo code Newman. Go to preparewithsentinel.com to get some long-term storable food and other things. The Homegrown Family Expo, that is starting today. It'll be going on for the next few days, online expo, but you can get the stuff anytime. Thanks again for tuning in, folks. Until next time, God bless you all.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm excited.